Welcome back and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I am Kenneth Shark Kinney, your host and Chief Shark Officer. In early 2020, I spoke at the inaugural Lead Generation World Conference in Denver, just a short time before everything shut down with the pandemic. But 14 months later, the event happened again, and I gladly returned to speak. The month moved, the location changed, and there was a whole lot of social distancing for those of us brave enough to go out in the world. I mean, after all, I did have a shark diving trip planned for the day before my speech, so I was good to go. The speaking stage, though, wasn't exactly fear factor, but the experience of going back to a conference for speakers and attendees was honestly a bit surreal. And although most of my content is evergreen with a little bit of silly stuff at the end, this was just a show where I wanted to interview a few friends who also spoke at the event. And speakers or not, the whole experience was somewhat new for all of us, whether on stage or not. You will be able to get a feel of the venue just from the different types of microphones used for the show and the people walking around with the ambient noise. So during the show, I caught up with the keynote speaker and author Tim Ash, sales and call center consultant Jason Cutter of Cutter Consulting Group, and CMO of Accessibility Shield, Jason McKee. Each of them spoke at the event as well as attended the show. And on this episode, we'll discuss one of the first conferences coming out of the pandemic, ring rust and getting back on stage, the whole in-person conference experience, elbow bumps instead of shaking hands, lead generation, Purell, temperature checks, expo halls and happy hours, first, but for a second time, social distancing, getting away from virtual, and a lot more. So let's tune in to 3 lead generation world speakers and attendees with a shark who is also glad to be speaking up on stage again on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. First up, let's chat with keynote speaker and author Tim Ash.
Tim, great to see you again here at Lead Generation World. What was it like to get back on stage after a hell of a year?
Wow, well, it was the first time on a plane for me in a year, actually. So public speaking came to a screeching halt. As you know, I focus on large-scale international conferences. I was supposed to be in Moscow in Italy in front of 17,000 in Sao Paulo last August. Boom, screeching halt. So this is my first time back in a year, and it feels great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just the feeling, I almost felt like I was going to kiss the stage had we not had a global pandemic and just dirt in general. But tell me a little bit about what you spoke about here at Lead Generation World in 2021.
Yeah, well, I was talking about durable marketing practices based on evolutionary psychology. I think if we're going to persuade people, we have to understand how the brain works, and I was giving some tips on how to take advantage of that when constructing lead generation offers and campaigns.
So how do you think behavior is changing, human behavior is changing for the mid to long term based on what we've gone through? Are you seeing anything that in your research it makes you think that we're looking at some longer term changes with how we process things? Again, not from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, because this is a small speck in a much bigger tree, but when you think about it from a lead gen standpoint in particular, how do you look at it?
I think that we build certain habits, and if we've had a year to build habits, and some of those have to do with doing a lot more things virtually and online. Things that would have required face-to-face contact before don't necessarily. We're comfortable transacting with remote people. We're comfortable seeing people on Zoom. So I think a lot of high-touch lead gen is actually going to move to Zoom meetings. Phone calls are getting shut out a bit. As you know, there's a lot of spam, and there are some topics here at the conference about that. I think the next thing is inbound. You have to ask for it, but you'll be face-to-face with an agent if it's a high-ticket item.
One thing you talked about during the conference, again, I'm a big fan of your new book, but when you look at your own behaviors pushing out a book during a pandemic, how has that sort of changed? I mean, for example, I know you and I have talked before when we recorded a previous episode, you've been on a gazillion podcasts now instead of a gazillion stages promoting it. What's that experience been like?
Well, actually, the book wouldn't have gotten written. I'm notorious for slipping deadlines. My first 2 were with a big publisher, Wiley Press, and each one of those was a year and a half after its original date. So the pandemic really focused the mind for me. I said, I'm going to put this to good use. And when I had that early spurt before we all got really tired of all the lockdowns and the open-ended nature of it, that's when the book got finished. So it was actually great for me.
well, I've read it, but tell the rest of the world what the book's about.
Well, the book is called Unleash Your Primal Brain, Demystifying How We Think and Why We Act. And it's basically the operating system for human beings. Covers everything from our evolutionary psychology, from risk, memory, learning, culture, storytelling, gender differences. It's all in there, but it helps demystify the brain and how things really work.
So let's go back to your presentation today, which was brilliant. Did you feel any ring rust when you got up there?
A little bit. I mean, it's strange. I've never liked empty halls. That's the speaker's worst nightmare. And not that the hall was empty, but the spacing was different. There are only four people allowed to the table.
There's not 100 people sitting together in a row of chairs.
That's right in front. So it's harder to focus your energy as a speaker. You have to focus on individual people around the room one at a time, and that's how you carry it.
Crystal ball, what do you think will happen with events over the mid to near term?
They're going to bounce back as soon as possible. I mean, there's a lead time in planning events and getting people to come to events, but our need to congregate, our need to be face-to-face, our need to close deals in person or to have experiential types of things, Zoom meeting is never going to replace that.
No, but have you seen, like me, a lot of my events now that had a 6-month lead time, it's now a week and a half. I mean, it's shortened because everybody's still sort of in that. I noticed it obviously with Zoom, with all those virtual meetings that I was doing and presentations. And there were some that had planning, but a lot of them were just, hey, are you busy next week? Now, what I'm starting to realize as well is that as we start rushing towards the fall, people are not planning out 9 months to a year. They're going about 2 months is almost considered long-term anymore.
Well, in a way, but the event planners still have long-term contracts and dates that they're committed to, and then it takes quite a bit of time to market to get your audience there. So yeah, virtual events have a lot more flexibility, and those can be done short-term, but live events, I think there's still kind of a 6-month lead time to do a decent event.
So let's talk about the behavior of people there. To a lot of people, to my own wife, to a lot of the world, when they see people coming and congregating together, it still gives them the heebie-jeebies on occasion. Have you felt good or bad or ugly about how things have progressed here?
I don't really see much difference. You wear a mask.
Yeah.
And instead of hugs, you're given elbow bumps these days, and that's about it. But this is not anymore. Purell. Yeah, a lot more Purell sanitizer, but this is not really any different for me to go to a grocery store, which I do on a regular basis. I'm around people in masks, and you try not to stay too close to them. It's common sense, but still, there's a really good thing about being in person with other people.
Absolutely. I've packed 10 times the normal amount of small Lysols, hand wipes, and Purell, mask, and even my hazmat suit I wore on stage.
I'll do you one better. I actually bought from a U.S. manufacturer direct some actual N95 masks, and I used one on the plane from San Diego to Orlando. They're not that comfortable, I got to say.
But, they're not.
But they do the job.
Well, Tim, great job today.
Thank you, Kenneth. It's my pleasure.
Next up, let's talk to sales and call center consultant, author, and founder of Cutter Consulting Group, Jason Cutter. All right, so Jason, how'd the show go for you? How was Lead Generation World? It's your first one, right?
Yes, it's my first one attending, my first time speaking. I'm bummed I didn't come last year for the first annual Lead Generation World. The timing didn't work out, and this was
what's
good.
the last show that you attended or spoke at in person?
The last show I attended, funny enough, is a show called HR West. It was in Oakland. It was March 9th, 10th, and 11th of last year. And I was there with a client. I helped them set up their first booth and sell from their first booth. And it was a show full of HR people. And we were all like, COVID, whatever. And then 5 days later, our state shut down.
Yeah, funny them. So what did you think about the feeling you kind of went through and experienced coming here this week?
It was weird because I not overly nervous, not overly anxious to travel and things like that. And it all came back like riding a bike. So I used to do a lot of that. And so everything, wearing a mask all the time is different. But other than that, like from getting on the plane to going through airports and Uber, literally just felt normal. Even being here, it's weirdly normal.
Yeah, except I was telling somebody, Tim Ash brought up a great example during his presentation that he referenced
first kiss and first time if you skydive, you don't remember the 100th time or whatever. This felt like the first time speaking in a weird way. You shake off your ring rust speaking, but at the same time, it felt very new.
It's definitely that, like after that kind of a long break, you will, and we will all remember this as the first conference after.
Yeah, Rip Van Winkle 12 months later and you wake up and we're somewhat coming out of a pandemic. So tell me about what you spoke about and what the problem is that you were addressing.
So I have a ton of experience as a buyer. I've actually never been a lead generator, a marketer, a seller of leads, a provider of anything like that. So I've always been within organizations or consulting. And so my topic was the 7 reasons why your campaign fails and what to do about it for buyers. So specifically to help buyers be successful. Most of the time, buyers think they need more leads, that'll fix it, or they think the leads are the problem. So if they just change vendors or lead generators or marketing strategies, they can just chase this magical Glengarry lead that's out there. And that's usually not the case of why they're failing with their campaigns.
I wouldn't disagree with you at all. However, how do you go about addressing that fix? Because in the short term, if you're wrong, it can devastate a company.
Yeah.
If they don't have enough leads. Again, I don't disagree with you, but knowing that you still need to fix the problem, how does somebody go about doing that at the same time that they're trying to fix sales today, this week, this month, this quarter? Seasonal businesses can't fix this and invent a new season, if you know what I mean. So how do you go about basically balancing the two timelines together so that you're not always focused on the Glengarry leads that may or may not be coming?
So for me, it's similar to changing a flat tire on a car while it's driving down the freeway. Which, funny thing, if you want to know,
at 90 miles
that's
an
a
hour.
funny analogy, and you're like, that's not possible. Look it up online. There's people that do that for fun, especially in the Middle East. There's tons of videos, 4 dudes in a car, and they'll turn it on its side going down the freeway. And so for me, it's that way. Everything that I do with my clients, it's not about stopping everything, putting it on hold, and let's rebuild it. It's about, what are you doing now? Then let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the team. Let's analyze actual facts, not what salespeople say and what sales managers say and what sales is thinking they want or need, and look at the numbers and then adjust and experiment, and then over time get it dialed in.
So you told me that you've made a connection here at the conference. You're able to potentially get some business out of it. Did you find from people you spoke with, or maybe even your own anticipation coming here, was it more of a learn and do some business, or just the connect and feel like you're part of the regular world again?
A couple of, I'd say it's either and or both of those. Some of it's like, this is just normal. But what's interesting, and this is my sense from this versus other lead-focused, marketing-focused shows I've been to in the past, those a lot of times feel very social. A lot of times it's very cliquish. People have what they have. They're not necessarily looking for more, and they're just hanging out. At least so far, this feels a little different, where people, yes, they're happy to be social and hang out, but they also have business things, and they're looking for solutions, and they're looking for more partnerships and more things that will help their business or their clients, versus, oh, yeah, I just wanted a reason to get to Vegas, and I don't really care what happens. This is like, I'm out of my state. Yeah, let's do some business.
Yeah, mom let me outside to play for 10 minutes. So look into your crystal ball, if you will. How do you see the near term and the, say, second to third quarter of 2021 progressing with what we're doing with conferences?
I think it's just going to progress. I think, there's going to be hybrid models. There's some that are going to do virtual. There's going to be that in-person. And I think people are just going to get more and more comfortable. Looking at how comfortable people are here for this conference, being close, how many people I've talked to people, and some of them have been vaccinated. You just look at that, like as the second and third quarter goes along, more people get vaccinated, more people get comfortable, hopefully still responsible, and the numbers work out in people's favor, then I think it's just, people are just itching to get back.
Well, and you've been locked up in California for 12 months.
Yeah.
What was it like going there? Because I've talked to some people, especially on Clubhouse, where the idea of a conference in Florida, let alone anywhere on the planet, was the devil's playground, and everybody's going to, it's like watching spring break videos and everybody's going to get COVID. And I've joked a little bit about it, but I too have lost people, relatives that were close to me, had many family members that have had it. I don't want to joke too much about it because it's serious, and I feel for all the people that have lost people. But at the same time, you can see where there's social distancing. The chairs are not connected. We're not jammed up next to each other. There's Purell at 1 foot in front of us. I mean, it's nonstop. I saw somebody at lunch using a mister, I guess, to ionize and clean everything. It's like a big Lysol machine spraying everything. So a lot of these steps made me feel more comfortable, and I've seen a lot of people with masks on. So,
but and to your point, coming from California, where literally we've been locked down, it's the first time I left my state since February of last year. Some people I know, luckily I don't interact with a lot of people who are negative and unsupportive. So I have a pretty small circle of people in my immediate life, especially, my physical area. Otherwise, I try to associate with people like yourself online who get it and, want to be smart and safe, but get it. But yeah, to go from California, where we're still locked down, you can 25% indoor dining as of the last week, to fly to Florida, to travel, A, to get to Florida, B, to go to an in-person conference, C, and then speak, and then make a trip out of that, seems absolutely ridiculous to a lot of people in California. Nice thing is they don't have the virus here in Florida, so it works out well.
Right. Well, and we're a couple of miles down the street from Disney World. I'm looking at sunshine and palm trees out the window, and everybody being there's nobody next to us for a good
not near us, no.
200 feet. So I think that that distancing rule is pretty good. All right. Well, Jason, we'll see you at another conference, hopefully in person again, much sooner.
We'll definitely do it for sure.
And finally, let's check in with the Chief Marketing Officer of Accessibility Shield, Jason McKee.
All right. So, Jason, we met at the same event in Denver a year ago, but tell me what you thought of Lead Generation Week and your presentation. Obviously, it's a different year, but what did you think of the event?
Well, I'm just happy to be here. Last year when we did this for the first time with Mike putting it all together, I was impressed with every aspect of the show. I was so excited for the next one. Then we had the pandemic, and now this is the first one this is the first time I've taken a flight since last March.
Wow.
So for me, it was a big milestone okay, let's get out, let's talk face to face. Everyone seems to be, still following the rules, and we definitely don't have, no one's hugging, there's not even a lot of handshaking, but I think for the people that I've been talking to, there's an appreciation for being out of the house. I think Orlando was the right spot. This place is huge, so there's plenty of room. It's a little weird doing your talking there. There's maybe some people in the room, but they're so spread out that it's a different vibe, but I know the people I've talked to are happy to be here, and the connections that I have made here, just like in Denver last year, are solid people that I want to talk to. There's not a lot of salesmanship of stuff that I don't need or don't want or I've heard before. These are the people, I was just telling you, just one of the talks that I heard, the guys talking about building the lead gen industry 20 years ago. This is great stuff, and Mike Free does a great job bringing these folks in.
It's interesting though, and I was thinking about really the way the crowds are spending a lot of times in the expo hall and the hall, as opposed to sitting in the tables and wanting to learn. There's so much more of a feeling where people just want to connect somehow. I was open to taking more meetings than I normally would, just because I could kind of get the feeling that it'd be good to have somebody offer to buy me a coffee for the 50th time at an event. But we've gone to so many events historically where people went to learn and connect. This one, I think, maybe because it's early in the year and we're just starting to see conferences, it's all about connecting even from a socially distant point of view.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a good point, and I think a lot of it, for me, I would much rather be able to have dinner with some folks and have a conversation. I don't care if it's about work or not.
You don't want a Zoom call instead?
It's been a rough year, but I will say, you have a good point there about the learning versus socializing, and we don't know what the new normal is going to be, because we've all learned about the virtual Zoom stuff. As a business owner, I've learned that there's a risk in sponsoring those things. It's hard to connect with folks who don't know you and get business out of it and develop relationships. But we've also learned that the content is created and it lives forever and it's on the website and we can digest that forever. So maybe what we're seeing is everyone getting together for the social aspect because they know the training stuff, the interesting stuff, is going to be something that they watch on the flight home. It'll be interesting to see how those numbers add up with people, of the views of those, instead of filling each hall with a speaker. I hope we do get back to that, but we know that we can go to those links and do the homework later.
It was like shaking off the ring rust and just seeing how the crowd interacts. It's so weird how you, in such a short period of time, can get conditioned to not seeing the people react to you giving a speech. If I had one person out there, though, or 1,000, I'll take whatever the number is just to see their face, to know how to react as a speaker, because it can make a dramatic difference in how you deliver your message.
Well, and you're a good speaker, and I'm not saying that just because we're friends, but you know how to talk to an audience, and you know as a professional that it doesn't matter if it's one person or 1,000, you have to deliver that information, and you enjoy delivering. That's what you really, get, because it's not easy. And you're right, after more than a year of doing this, I'm not the best speaker in the world, I know that, but this was like starting fresh. It was, there was butterflies, and I'm like, okay, don't stutter, and do you remember everything in the presentation? Because the Zoom stuff at home and all the different monitors open and the notes open, that's easy stuff. You don't even have the jitters. You're sitting there in your sweatpants. This is back to the real world, which I love. And I was, last night it was like getting nervous, but after getting through it, It feels good again. It feels like this is what we should be doing.
Tim Ash brought up in his presentation how you feel. He used skydiving, and then he did one with a kiss. Yeah, you might remember your first kiss, but do you remember your 100th? I don't remember my 100th or my 7th or whatever number presentation I've done on a stage, because I've been doing it for 20, almost 30 years on occasion. So my first one I remember. Most of them in between, you remember some of the major milestones, maybe the first time ever at a major conference. This almost feels like a new first, So it was
another memory.
Like, I don't think I'll forget this moment compared to 50 other conferences I did last year that were virtual. So let's talk a little bit about what you spoke about at your presentation, was talking about accessibility, your company Accessibility Shield. So a year ago, when we first met in Denver at another lead generation world, we were at a place with accessibility. Since in that year's past, a pandemic's gone on, customer experience has changed, everything's moved to digital. Has accessibility improved or gotten worse in the last 12 months?
Well, it's been quite a ride. When we met, this company's brand new. We just started getting our feet wet. We had a lot of great introductions and friends, and it grew quickly, and it was a blessing. But as soon as I developed a rhythm for getting in front of an audience and educating them, and growing the business, the lockdown happened. And to be perfectly honest, last February, March, and April, it was bleak. I didn't know what was going to happen, and the worst part was I didn't know what I could do about it. And as a business owner, not having control of anything with your business development was, I wasn't sleeping. I didn't know what to do, but I kind of got to that point where the older I get, I've done this more than once, where I realize I don't have any control. There really isn't any, so just let's see what happens. And it turned into, right when I thought, it was very, very bleak, and perhaps we weren't even going to survive, I started getting phone calls. And the phone calls were from general counsel of corporations, leaders in organizations, and their message was, we are seeing a huge surge in demand for what we're delivering. So this is a lot of higher ed, online education, cannabis companies that realized this. Either they heard about it, or some of them were hit with lawsuits or demand letters. Whatever it was, all of a sudden, it wasn't a sales pitch and a conversation about what it's going to cost. It was what is this about? How does it work? And what do I need to do to fix this problem? And it was a huge boost. And we ended up at the end of the year better than where we projected to be without a pandemic. And that surge continues to this day. So one of the silver linings that I like to talk about, I don't want to be flippant about COVID. I've lost people I care about, well, I know you have as well. But we have to look at the positives in life. We have to keep moving. And for me, people realizing that the digital universe is critical for some people. Maybe it's for a kid who's on lockdown and needs to study, but for someone who's disabled, it's a whole different level of critical, and now we have a conversation about it. So I think the world is going to accept this accommodation, and I have very optimistic views for the rest of this year and moving forward.
It's fantastic. Well, I was going to say the first thing I think about when I hear cannabis is not accessibility. However, I do find that interesting, though, that the improvement people are really starting to focus on digital, not throw money at it like we've done the last 20 years, but really focus on the experience of it and everything else, and what that means to your end customer, whether they be average Joe or Sally or somebody who has some sort of disability and needs some sort of help and fix to get it to it. At least companies are starting to address that without it only being because of a lawsuit.
Yeah, and you know at a very, very intricate level how people interact with the web.
100%.
You've been in how people capture information, make money. You've been at the cutting edge of what the web does with users and interaction. So you can understand if there's no ability to interact, we got a problem. And it's not just there's a law problem, but you're losing money. There's people who can't submit that form or check out at that cart. So these are the conversations, this is why I'm here and why you and I talk about this stuff. But I think that folks here and you especially, what this really means for the web and in a big picture. And I'm hoping that we're going to start seeing some traction as we all, get back to work here.
Well, it's something that I always think is fascinating with people in our space. They talk about knowing their customer. It's so rare that you ever hear a marketer or any business whatsoever talk about their customer having some sort of accessibility issue or disability. And when you think of 1 in 5 of your customers likely has to consume content in a different way, and if you think of how reliant we are becoming on e-commerce channels, you damn well better know that a lot of people that I care closely about that have disabilities are paying customers. They're not some anomaly in society that we ignore because they need special parking. I mean, these are people with real incomes and real concerns, and they become loyal, rabid fans when you create the right kind of path to help them become more enabled to have their own accessibility interaction with you digitally.
Absolutely. And when you make that accommodation for this different type of perspective, this different type of user, there's all these added benefits that come with it. Your SEO is better, your user experience is better, you have a larger audience to market to, your brand reputation.
Less lawyers to worry about.
What's that?
Less lawyers to worry about.
Less lawyers to worry about. There's a million reasons to do it. And you know what? If you're in lead gen and e-commerce, Amazon's already doing it. Okay, they're already gobbling up everything. Do you think they don't know about this? Because they're accessible. Target was early on, this was the 2004, I think, was sued because the checkout was inaccessible. It was impossible for a disabled user to check out. They realized that, they learned, and they transformed, and they've been accessible ever since.
How do you start, if you're DIY, if you will, to start making certain that you at least have some initial focus on making your site accessible?
It's a good question, and it is a problem because these changes aren't free, and there's expertise required, and we work with companies that have in-house programming staff that is top of the food chain. These people know HTML and every other language, but they don't know the nuances of accessibility. So even for them, and that was, it's a big challenge to say, well, you guys are expert at everything you do, but you need to add this and we need to help. So for a small mom and pop company that wants to be accessible, it's a challenge. But there's a million ways for them you can reach out to the disabled community. There's nonprofits that will help you test. There is a lot of ways. If you just start Googling, I would suggest Googling the WCAG standards, WCAG standards. This is all public information. It's free. And if you are a programmer, you can teach yourself. My partner has taught himself. He learned this because we wanted to find a solution for it. We didn't know how to do it. So you can learn it, but you have to be dedicated to it. But the information's free. It's out there in the public.
Jason, I'll see you at the next show, hopefully sooner rather than the last one.
Thanks, Kenneth.
So there was my conversation with Tim Ash, Jason Cutter, and Jason McKee while we were live from the Lead Generation World 2021 conference in Orlando, Florida. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversations with them. First, I'm fascinated with how people in society will adapt coming out of this pandemic and how behaviors and attitudes are changing for better or worse. A lot of people will go into large crowds to get groceries, go to vote, go get their vaccine shots, even go to a spring break trip and get on a plane crammed next to each other with only millimeters to spare between you and the person in the seat next to you. But then the attitudes are very different wherever you live, whether you're near the coast or in the heartland or in the U.S. or out. And everyone inside each of those locations has their personal views on travel and the pandemic and how we stay safe. Interestingly, I hear a lot of people talk about conferences and the ideas of going to one is just a line they won't cross, if not in the second half of 2021, the first half of 2022. We all get it though. Everyone looks at this in their own personal way. But let me add that it was amazing to discuss with people and see how much people just wanted to connect again in person. Virtual conferences have helped us all. Thank you, Zoom. Even when wearing masks, we crave face-to-face interactions with each other, and it clearly showed. The experience simply cannot be replicated virtually. Second, I applaud the conference host as well as the hotel. Mike and the Lead Generation World team did a great job with social distancing, temperature checks, masks, Purell, and all the things you would expect to feel comfortable. The Hyatt Hotel in Orlando had lots of signs and reminders everywhere about masks and distancing, hand sanitizer, cleaning during the event at breaks, the staff wearing masks, and all the stuff you'd hope for to be safe. That confidence needs to be created so people can trust the experience again. Now it's just left up to attendees and speakers and everyone that does attend to just make sure to be safe and respect not only your health, but everyone else's. Third, so Tim brought up something on his opening speech about how you remember your first kiss or how you may remember your first skydiving trip. You don't remember the 100th kiss, for example, or the 40th skydiving trip in the same way. The conference to me was kind of like that with a second first kiss or a second first dive. Or at least for me, the analogy would be a second first shark dive that I've done over and over again for decades. I've done a bunch of shark and scuba diving since the pandemic started. That second first experience, though, with getting up on stage was surreal. And maybe that's a good thing because we definitely should take a moment to appreciate the time that has passed and our emergence coming out of it. Funny story, though, when introduced by the MC, I actually took the stage wearing my paper mask, but I also had on my scuba mask because that's how I appreciate masking up, and I also wore a paper hazmat suit. I definitely got to post that picture on social. I took off the suit while presenting and wore normal clothes to finish out. The idea, though, wasn't to mock COVID. I've lost family to this damn virus, so I get it. But it was somewhat of a metaphor for how we're changing behaviors in relation to my presentation topic. Hopefully, though, those days will be over soon and we can get together safely. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. I'm so thankful for every listener, and I hope to see you again in person. And be safe, be well, and join us in the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.